You're listening to the Patriot Nation Podcast.
All right, welcome back to the Patriot Nation Podcast. It's your boy, Pat Lane, as always with you. Tonight, I have a very special guest. No Matt tonight, but in his stead, we have a very special guest. He covers Boston sports for 98.5 The Sports Hub. He's also the co-host of the Catch-22 podcast for Patriots.com. You know him. You love him. Alex Barth. Alex, thanks so much for coming on, man.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
Yep. Yeah, it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. So we are going to be talking tonight about the first two rounds specifically of the draft. Okay. And we were talking about this beforehand, but we're going to talk about what we want them to do and what we think they're probably going to do. And those two things almost never align. And so we'll kind of go from there. Although last year did happen with Marcus Jones. I was very excited. As you can see over my shoulder here, I got the Marcus Jones autographed jersey over my shoulder here. So I'm excited about that one. But typically, the guys you want them to draft, they just don't come here. It's just the way it works.
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Marcus Jones was one last year a lot of people had. I was the guy, I'm patient zero for Zappe Fever. I was the guy writing at this time last year how much I wanted the Patriots to draft Bailey Zappe. Now, apparently, if you listen to people, I hate Bailey Zappe because I won't say he's better than Mac Jones because he's not. But that was one I got. You always get a couple. It's never the guy you really want.
Right.
But you always get a couple.
Yeah. Yep. I love it. I'm excited about it. So one quick thing, and speaking about the first round of the draft, as you guys know, we're going to be live the entire first round of the draft. And just a reminder, we are doing our giveaway. All right. I got the hat here, right here. So someone on draft night is going to win this hat that the Patriots first round pick and all their picks are going to walk away with. Okay. You just got to be on the live stream, on the round one live stream at some point and make a comment. I don't care what you say. It doesn't matter. Your comment can be, I hate you and your show sucks. We would prefer if it isn't, but it could be. And your name is getting thrown into a hat. And so we'll go from there. Okay. So come on in and join and subscribe while you're here. Subscribe to the new YouTube channel while you're here because we lost all of our Pat's Pulpit subscribers. So we want to get them back for Pat's Nation Network. So that's just Thursday night, the 27th of April. It's fast approaching. Today is the 12th of April. We're like 2 weeks away.
2 weeks from tonight. Yeah, 2 weeks from tonight. From probably about right now. I think the 14th pick usually comes in just after the 10 o'clock hour. So we'll have some news. Maybe a player, maybe a trade down. But 2 weeks from right now, I think we'll have something.
Agreed. Yep, agreed. And Dark Blue Gold does hate me and show sucks, although he can't spell practicing right. But it is what it is. He's English, so it's fine. All right, so let's get into it. Let's jump right in. Okay, who's the guy for you? If you're in the war room and you're sitting there and you're at 14, who is the guy that you're like, this is the guy they have to take at 14 if he's on the board? Who is that guy for you?
So there's two. I guess we're not considering Christian Gonzalez a top 10 lock now. I don't understand why. I don't see how he gets past 6 to the Lions. Maybe they decide to go offense. He goes 8th to the Falcons. But I don't see how he's on the board at 14. But every time I say that, people get annoyed. What about Devin Witherspoon? I think Christian Gonzalez is just Devin Witherspoon, but 3 inches taller.
Yeah.
So, but if he's there, sprint the card to the table.
Mm-hmm.
The other one that, again, is kind of 50-50. I really like Paris Johnson from Ohio State. I just think he's going to be a stud left tackle in this league for a decade. You got to get Mac Jones blindside protected. Hasn't been enough. They haven't done enough to do that. Trent Brown is a question mark. I think if he's on, he can be that guy. But as we saw last year, that's hardly a guarantee. So corner and tackle for me, if they can land one of those two, and they should have a chance between the top corners and the top tackles. If they can land one of those two spots, I'd be happy.
Yeah. It's funny. You took the words right out of my mouth. Those are the guys for me too. I think Paris Johnson is my tackle one. You could talk about Broderick Jones and you could talk about, other guys that are on the board, and Darnell Wright's getting a ton of love at this point. I think that he's going to probably end up being a first round pick when all said and done. Yeah. but Paris Johnson just is the best guy out there. And so he's number one for me. And Christian Gonzalez, he's my cornerback one. He's been cornerback one since the beginning. People are out there saying that he's soft and he plays soft. Where do you see that? I don't see where he plays soft ever. He's not maybe as hard hitting as Devin Witherspoon, but he's also bigger. And I think he has better agility than Devin Witherspoon has too. So I don't know what people are looking at.
Yeah, he's such a smooth mover, Gonzalez. I'm trying to remember who the corner was a couple of years ago. He was like a first round consensus top 15 guy. Everybody said he was soft because he didn't tackle, but he didn't tackle because the guy who was covering was never throwing the ball. Like he was never in a spot to tackle.
Yeah.
And Christian Gonzalez to me is kind of like that. Devin Witherspoon, don't get me wrong, has some great tape of making tackles, both when guys catch the ball and in the run game. He's a ferocious hitter.
Right.
And I love that about him. Christian Gonzalez isn't really around the ball that much because it's never thrown near him. And against the run, he's an average tackler. He's not Witherspoon, certainly, but Witherspoon is one of the best tackling corners we've seen in the draft in a couple of years, I think.
Right.
At least in the first round. So Gonzalez isn't going to be that good. But yeah, he doesn't tackle a lot of receivers because they don't catch the ball.
Right. So a guy I would add to the list is Nolan Smith. And I might be a little early at 14. Smith seems to be dropping a bit. Obviously, Jalen Carter. But I just, even with the legal stuff that happened, I just can't imagine Jalen Carter doesn't end up in the top 10. I mean, that'd just be insane to me. I think he's just the talent and the skill level that he brings at that position. And yes, it's defensive tackle, but when you have an elite defensive tackle like he is, you pay for that because it's just like an edge rusher. If you can get to the passer from the middle, it's almost more valuable. I mean, the Patriots for years were looking for that guy that could get pressure from the inside, and they could never find it. And that's why, they moved up to get Christian Barmore. And, he's been on and off and hasn't been healthy and so on and so forth. But I think they jump at the chance to take Carter again at 14 if he somehow was there.
Yeah, on Carter, if he falls to 14, there's a massive red flag there. At that point, it tells me he's untouchable.
Right.
I look at the Eagles sitting there with the 10th pick. They just went to the Super Bowl. They have a very complete roster. They have 2 first-round picks. They've met with him. They have all the incentive in the world. They have all the reason in the world to make that pick. It is a massive risk, and they can afford to do it.
Yep.
If they don't feel comfortable taking Jalen Carter at 10, I certainly don't think the Patriots can afford to be comfortable taking him at 14 because they do not have the margin for error with this pick that the Eagles do. Their margin for error, I don't know that there is one, frankly, with this pick, given the way the last couple of years have gone. On Nolan Smith, he's kind of my break glass in case of emergency pick. Let's say Paris Johnson and Broderick Jones go, Christian Gonzalez, Devin Witherspoon, Joey Porter go, Jackson Smith and Jigba's gone. Maybe they don't love Zay Flowers at his size. You're going to add a good football player, Nolan Smith, and he does give you something you need. They need another edge rusher. They do. To me, he's the guy all right, the board absolutely didn't fall their way. Okay, you can walk away with Nolan's, and they can't find the trade back or anything. Basically, 2015 Bruins. I know people cringe when they hear that, but you're going to walk away from Nolan Smith. You're not going to feel terrible about what you did. That's kind of where I'm at with him. Or if they really like Anton Harrison, DeJuan Jones, tackles they can get in the second round, and they really like whether it's a receiver or a tight end, some pass catcher they can get on day 2, and they know all right, we're going to go DeJuan Jones, or how about this? So we're going to go DeJuan Jones in the second, and then Marvin Mims in the third, or we're going to go Josh Downs in the second, Blake Freeland in the third. They feel really good about that, and they're not as worried about corner, or it's a deep corner class. You get the point. You can mix a corner in there.
Right. Yeah.
Then, maybe you go Nolan Smith. There is a way they take Nolan Smith and still hit all their needs just because this draft is so deep at some of the positions they need.
Right.
But I like the player, but he went things didn't go well on the board leading up to the pick if they walk away with Nolan Smith. Yeah.
No, it makes sense. It makes sense. I think he's one of those guys where I kind of look at it and he started falling, and I'm kind of like, why is he falling now? But again, I think the Patriots are in a unique situation this year where quarterbacks are going to go early. You got to figure that 3 are going to be gone off the board before they pick for sure. I think there's a possibility that a fourth is gone. And this is never going to happen. And we talk about it leading up to the draft, and that never happens. But like Hendon Hooker's getting a ton of juice right now. I don't see it. And not that Hendon Hooker's not good. He's going to miss the entire year. He's 25 years old.
He might not. Ian Rappaport
maybe he doesn't,
said at the combine that he's supposed to be like football ready for week 1. Now, maybe he starts the season on IR and, has to ramp up.
Or whatever the case may be, yeah.
That was when the Hendon Hooker first round hype started picking up, was when we heard that, okay, he might actually, because I'm with you. Guy's going to be 27 years old when he sets foot on an NFL field for the first time. No, thank you. Right. If you can get him this year and you're a team that feels like you're a quarterback away, the Ravens, if Lamar leaves, which now it's looking like there's less of a chance that happens, but I look at that 22nd pick. I look at the Eagles at 30, and the Saints at 29, being in a strong spot to trade down, and maybe you get a team like Tennessee moving up to take him. Right. Maybe you get Las Vegas moving up for a second pick, or moving back from 7 to take him. Maybe even a team like San Francisco. We don't know what the hell their quarterback situation is. And frankly, I don't think they know either.
I don't think so either, no.
I can see him sneaking into the back end of the first round. Absolutely. I also wouldn't be surprised. This is kind of one of my, I don't have many hot draft takes. This is one of them.
Yes.
Because all it takes is one team.
Right.
It doesn't take 32 teams to make a player a top 15 player. It takes one. It sounds like NFL teams maybe aren't as high on Will Levis as the initial prognostication suggested, which, by the way, they're correct. I don't get why we're considering him a top 10 pick.
Yeah.
I don't get that. If one team really likes Hendon Hooker, it would not be the most surprising thing in the world if Will Levis falls and Hendon Hooker ends up going before him.
Right.
Would not shock. Now, that's going to happen in the 20s. It doesn't happen unless Will Levis falls.
Right.
But it wouldn't be the most surprising thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, it is interesting. And, from a perspective of a team, right? If you like a guy, if you're in on Hendon Hooker, or even Will Levis, let's say it's Levis instead of Hendon Hooker, whoever it might be, and you're drafting at, 36, well, it makes sense to move up into the first round because you get that fifth year. You get that fifth year under the rookie contract, and then you don't have to worry about extending him right away. You can spend that extra year to say, hey, let's kind of see what happens. Let's play it out a little bit and go from there. If he's Joe Burrow or Patrick Mahomes, well, then we don't have to worry about that. We just extend him to 3 years. Who cares? But if he isn't, we get that extra year to kind of decide and see what we want to do. And I think that, if you're trading up 10 picks, it's almost a no-brainer. And you give up, a third round pick to go do that because it's worth it for you to have that extra year.
Yeah, and the other thing with Hooker, you almost get the inverse of it, where he's 26. I know this is going to sound like it's not a lot, but trust me, it is. It's got to be a team that feels like they're a quarterback away. Before the whole Aaron Rodgers thing, I thought the Jets were the perfect example of this. It might be the Raiders. Right. You draft Hendon Hooker, you now have him under team control until he's 30. Yeah. And then either at that point, your window runs out, you can re-sign him, but you're negotiating with a 30-year-old, not like a 26 or 27-year-old, so you have more leverage. Or he's kind of aged out at that point. It's like the perfect breaking point.
Yeah.
Perfect point to go the separate ways. So
that's a great point.
Yeah.
That's a great point. Yeah. So I do think it's interesting. One guy I want to ask you about, because, and I think what you said is so perfect. The Patriots right now are in that make or break it spot. You have to have a good draft because there are holes. You got holes at certainly on the offensive line for sure. You still got holes at wide receiver. You need probably another tight end, right? You could use another cornerback. Like, I think what they've done in free agency, and we've talked about this on the show a few times, and I'm sure you've done the same thing on yours. What they've done in free agency is given them a floor where they can say, hey, look, if we got to go into the year with Trent Brown and Riley Reif starting at tackle, I mean, they're not going to be all pros, but they're going to be at least competent players. And so we don't have to reach for our fourth tackle on the board at 14 because we just have to have a starting offensive tackle. So I think they've done enough to give themselves depth there. And at wide receiver is the same thing. It's like, we could really use a number one wide receiver, but you could go into the season with this wide receiving core. It's not going to blow anyone away, but like it's going to at least be competent. But, then that allows, then it's like, all right, best player available and so on and so forth. And we can talk about, whether that's a whole nother rabbit hole as to whether that was a good decision or not by them. But that's kind of where they are, where they feel like we have the depth. But a guy I want to talk about, because I think it kind of plays into this, where I think some people might get a little desperate, and where the Patriots do have to hit a home run here in the first round. I want to hear your thoughts on Peter Skoronski, because I am scared to death that they're going to draft this kid and his arms are going to be too short, or he's not going to be able to play tackle, and they're going to end up having to kick him in the guard. And now they have 3 guards that can play and no tackles. And so, I don't know what your thoughts are there, but he scares the hell out of me.
Yeah, and look, the reality would be you have drafted 2 left guards in back-to-back years, because I don't think Cole Strange or Peter Skoronski can play right guard. So now you're really in trouble.
Yeah.
Which tells me, and I think they understand that, if they draft Peter Skoronski, he's a tackle.
Right.
I mean, this is one of those ones where you really wish they had Dante Scarnecchia. Look, there's been 2 tackles in the last 10 years drafted in the first round with under 30-inch arms. One is Caleb McGarry, who was just, it took him a couple years to get going for the Falcons, but he was one of the top free agents on the market this year. And the other was Justin Pugh, who started playing guard like 2 years later.
Yeah.
So the track record's not great. Yet here we are still talking about Peter Skoronski, not just as a tackle, but as a potential top half of the first round tackle.
Right.
That should tell you a lot about how technically skilled this kid is. And he is. It's basically, how much do you believe in his technique? Now, before the arm measurements, he was the consensus #1 tackle in this class, and there was no question about it.
Yeah.
He was in a tier above Paris Johnson and Broderick Jones. How much do they trust that talent, that technique, to transfer to the next level? I still think you can get Paris Johnson. If you can get Broderick Jones, you get those guys. I wouldn't take Peter Skoronski over them.
Right.
But, so you said it before, they're in a position where they don't necessarily have to reach to address their biggest need. But I think it might be their MO, Pat. I don't know if 2 years is long enough for something to be a trend, but in the 2 years where Matt Groh has really run the draft board, throw positional value out the window here. In 2021, their biggest need, if you have to play a game that day, where's your biggest hole in the depth chart? In 2021, it was quarterback, and they took a quarterback. They arguably overdrafted him, but they took the best quarterback on the board. Last year, you can say receiver was a bigger need. You can say corner was a bigger need. You can say tackle was a bigger need objectively. But throw out the positional value. Drew Desjardins, Canadian Football League All-Star Drew Desjardins. Remember when we were all putting our eggs in his basket?
Oh, yeah.
Would have been the starting left tackle. So, and by the way, there's a run on tackles in the first round. So what do? They trade back, right? Because Kenyon Green was off the board. Zion Johnson was off the board. Mm-hmm. They trade back and they take the best tackle available. That's Cole Strange. Now, did they take him too early? Maybe, but he was the best tackle available at that point. He was their biggest need.
Right.
Let's say they view it that way again this year. Now, I don't think that they're going to think tackle's their biggest need, for the record. But if they do think tackle's the biggest need at this point, and Paris Johnson's gone and Broderick Jones is gone, Peter Skoronski might be tackle 3 on their board. It might be Darnell Wright. But I think they're inherently going to view a left tackle as more valuable than a right tackle.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, history tells us Peter Skoronski's the pick at 14. I would just go with DeJuan Jones. I think DeJuan Jones is the most slept-on player in this draft.
Yeah.
But, yeah, if they say tackles are our biggest need and Broderick Jones and Paris Johnson are gone, I think there's a good chance they take Peter Skoronski at 14 if they stay to make that pick.
Yeah. Oh, man.
So what would help you, I'll tell you this, what would help you is they also may look at it and say, all right, so group 1 is, tier 1 is Broderick Jones, Paris Johnson, Peter Skoronski. Tier 2 is Anton Harrison, Darnell Wright, DeJuan Jones. They may look at that and say, you know what? Instead of getting the scraps at tier 1, we're going to trade down and we're going to kick off tier 2, right? We're going to move down to the high 20s. I look at the Chargers at pick 21 as a perfect spot for them to trade up. And they're going to say, you know what? whether it's Harrison, whether it's Darnell Wright, whether it's DeJuan Jones, like one of those guys will be there at 21.
Yeah.
We're not going to take this risk. We're going to get an extra pick, maybe double up on tackle later on, hedge our bets, and go with one of the guys from tier 2. That also feels very realistic for them.
Yeah, I agree with you. And that to me would be the better thing. Now, the problem is that you're not in a draft where there's a ton of high-end talent. And so well,
there is, but just it doesn't line up. The high-end talent is their positions of need. Right. Let's say this draft, let's say Will Levis was actually good and Hendon Hooker was healthy.
Right.
That 14th pick becomes super easy to trade down because the last guy, it's like the Patriots, right? Taking Mac Jones at 15. Somebody's going to overpay to get the last quarterback. Let's say there was more than one first-round talent receiver in this draft. Super easy to move up. But it's tackles and corners. It's tackles, corners, and edge rushers.
Yeah.
That's what the Patriots need. So they're not going to trade back to let somebody else take their need necessarily.
Right.
The best thing that can happen for the Patriots in this draft is Anthony Richardson falls. I don't think it's going to happen, but if enough teams get scared of the gap between the floor and the ceiling, some team lower down there who's been in the playoffs, but maybe has an older quarterback and knows they're going to need it in a year or two, moving up to 14. That's the best thing that could happen for the Patriots in this draft. Not that I think it happens.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Honestly, if I were the Panthers, I'd be taking Anthony Richardson only because the ceiling is so astronomically high with him that you take that risk. And if you strike out, if you miss, then you miss. But you trust your coaching staff to say, this kid, you can see it. This kid has it. And if he's a worker, and I don't know what the hard part about this stuff is that, what people don't talk about is that 99% of, maybe not 99, 90% of the success of the players has nothing to do with what happens on the field and everything to do with what happens off the field. How much work do they put in? What's their mentality when they show up every day? Are they willing to take coaching? All of those things come into play that us laymen have no idea about. And even the coaching staff going into this and the scouting staff, they have an idea from these colleges, but what are these colleges going to do? They're going to talk crap about their player that's going to get drafted in the first round? No way. And so getting an accurate view of that is tough. And so that to me is hard with Richardson. If he's a worker like Josh Allen's a worker, well, then it could really work out. But if he's not, then it probably won't work out. But you don't know that going into the draft.
And I'd say a couple things from that. One, just from a Patriots point of view, that's why going to the Shrine Bowl was so valuable.
Yeah.
Get to know those kids, right? I think the other element too, even more so than that, and I say this all the time, the draft is really a nature versus nurture thing. When people say, will this player be good? Will this player not be good? I don't know. Who's drafting him? Right? Because there's teams that are great for quarterbacks. There's teams that ruin quarterbacks. There's teams that are great for receivers. There's teams that ruin receivers. There's teams that are great for corners. There's teams that ruin corners. Where's he going? Like that's, a big part of it. Like Anthony Richardson for me is such a nurture guy. Before the Giants signed Daniel Jones that extension, I thought it was the perfect match for them to move up and take him because you get Brian Daboll, the guy who created Josh Allen. I'm going to put my cards on the table here. Josh Allen might not get a second contract if Brian Daboll never becomes the OC in Buffalo. Okay. I think he had that much of an impact. And it's funny you use that comp for Anthony Richardson. The way I describe Anthony Richardson, and people know how I feel about Josh Allen. Josh Allen is the most erratic quarterback in the league. No matter how you feel about him, you can't push back on that. He led the league in turnovers last year. His highs are maybe as high as anybody except maybe Patrick Mahomes. But when he's at his lows, he really does not look like a starting quarterback. Anthony Richardson, to me, is an extreme version of Josh Allen. I think his highs could be 10 times higher than Josh Allen's are. Right. But I think the risk that comes with it is year one Josh Allen, but significantly worse.
Right.
So it really comes down to how much do you trust your coaching staff to put this guy in a position to succeed. Panthers just overhauled their coaching staff, so you'd think they believe in the group they have. I feel like they've struck out so much recently. You kind of have to go with a little bit of a safer bet in CJ Stroud. Stroud's not a bad player. I look at like the Falcons, where you have a guy in Desmond Ridder who you just drafted, who does have some floor. You have a guy in Taylor Heineke who has some floor. I actually, like the last 2 years, every time the Falcons make a roster move outside of drafting Drake London, I find myself loving it. They've done a great job. They just need a quarterback and another receiver, but you can draft Richardson. You don't need to play him right away, but if he's up to it, you kind of have a team around him where he can succeed.
Yeah.
That to me would be like the perfect spot for Anthony Richardson. I love him in the Arthur Smith offense. That's, as a fan of his, that's where I hope he ends up.
Yeah, it's a good one. That's a really good one. And that helps the Patriots because that's a team that is going to, if they don't draft a quarterback, is going to take a position that you probably need.
Yeah.
And so that certainly helps the Patriots out there. So it is interesting. I mean, the whole quarterback discussion is really fascinating, and the top of the draft is going to be really interesting, and to see where these guys all kind of fall and where people have, people slotted in and so on and so forth, I think is going to be fascinating. So let's move out of the first round though and get to the second round. So we're at pick 46. Patriots are at pick 46. Now, maybe they end up with another second round, or maybe they don't, but nevertheless, they're at 46 right now. Same question. You're at 46. Who's the guy that you think is probably going to be there that you're like, there's my guy at 46?
So first of all, I think they're going to trade up. They've traded up in the second round the last, Miguel, Pat's Cap had it, the last like 4 or 5 years in a row.
Really?
And
they did it last year too?
Yep, Tyquan Thornton. They moved up from 52
that's right.
to 50. They jumped the Steelers.
Yes,
they're not always big trade-ups.
Right.
But, that Barmore trade, 2nd and 2/4 for the higher second. They have 3/4, so they're in great position to do it. I think like 30 to 40 in this draft. There's a ton of talent there. And if you'll allow me to nerd out for a second here.
Do it.
We talk about value in terms of trades. I know people hear value in the draft with the Patriots and they roll their eyes. But so a couple things to know. The biggest drop in value in the NFL draft from pick to pick when you're talking about trades is 1 to 2, because you don't get to pick any player you want anymore.
Right.
The second biggest drop is not actually 2 to 3. The second biggest drop is normally I'm kind of doing the Brian Windhorst thing here. Normally 32 to 33 because of the 5th-year option, like we talked about earlier. You pick a guy 32nd, you get a whole other year of team control, affordable team control that you don't get when you pick a guy at 33. This year, there were only 31 first-round picks because the Miami Dolphins lost theirs for dinking around with Tom Brady and Sean Payton, right?
Right.
So what does that all mean? It means that the 32nd pick has, I don't want to say has never been less valuable, because there's been other years where there were 31 picks. It's the Patriots one year. But this is as little value as the 32nd pick will ever have. But that also means this is the easiest year to trade up to the 32nd pick. And it just so happens that's kind of where the meat of this draft is.
Yeah.
Put that all together. I love the Patriots trading up to the 32nd pick this year. I love it. Where the Steelers are. And honestly, trading back to 17 where the Steelers are makes a ton of sense too. So maybe you get like a 2 for there, right? Where you go from 14 to 17 and then 46 to 32. And then you maybe pick up like a day 3 pick somewhere in there.
Right.
But I love that move for them. Even if it's not 32 though, I think they trade up. And the guys I'm looking at there, obviously some of it depends on what happens in the first round. But if they're going tackle, I like DeJuan Jones there. I like Anton Harrison, Darnell Wright if they fall. If we're going to talk about corners in that spot, Julius Brents has been my draft crush since the college football playoffs. 6'3", 210, long arms, man corner, but he can actually move. Every time I bring him up, people go, Juwan Williams. Yeah. Go look at like his combine testing numbers. They blow Juwan Williams out of the water. Yeah. He ran a 4.5 40. It's not exactly what you want, but you're not putting him on Tyreek Hill. Right. You're putting him on T. Higgins. And he has the long speed to keep up with those guys. And again, the agility is great. So I look at Julius Brents there in the corner spot. Maybe Keely Ringo falls. He could be a guy there from Georgia. I like Darius Rush from South Carolina as well. I certainly think you start talking about tight ends there. Darnell Washington, to me, is the only tight end they should take in the top 100.
Yeah.
If you're not going to take him, you're going to take one of these like hybrid receivers. At that point, wait and take Zach Kuntz at the beginning of the 4th round. But if you really want to go with the tight end, Darnell Washington, the do-it-all guy from Georgia's the pick. And then if we're going to go receivers here, I know I said Marvin Mims at 76 earlier. I don't hate reaching for him. I don't. I think he's very slept on. Kind of reminds me, the comp I've been using is David Patton, but maybe faster. And then the other, I don't know how he fits on the roster, but I'm such a huge fan of Josh Downs. Looks like Julian Edelman, the way he plays the game.
Yeah, he does. Yeah.
Footwork king, just gets himself open, route running. You know, he's got the masters in route running, as Evan likes to say, all of that. Really, the only reason he's not in first round conversation is because Jackson Smith and Jigba is Josh Downs with more yak. Right. And if Jackson Smith and Jigba wasn't there, we'd be pushing Josh Downs a lot higher up the draft board. I don't know how he fits, because then you probably have to play Juju on the outside, which isn't where he's at his best. So that becomes weird, but man, he's talented enough that, like, if he's there, figure it out. You know, I'd rather address one of those other needs, but I'm not going to be upset if they come away with Josh Downs, because you've got your slot guy for the next 10 years.
I like it. No, I like it. I like it. And, you know, guy that is my guy that anyone listens to the show knows, Emmanuel Forbes is my guy. But as much as I love Emmanuel Forbes' tape and what he can do, you know, he's 166 pounds. Like, it's,
I don't think they're going to care, though.
That's true. Well, it is true. I mean, I just think him, Jack Jones, and Marcus Jones, and even John Jones isn't that big either. You're trotting out guys that are going to get trucked in the running game, but maybe that doesn't matter anymore. Maybe size really doesn't matter in the NFL anymore.
Well, so I think beyond that, you look at some of the receivers you're going to have to go through in the AFC. You got to play receivers that can create after the catch, and bigger guys, T. Higgins, Shamar Chase, Devontae Adams, guys like that. You need corners you can tackle. That being said, they took a bunch of small corners last year. I think they're more concerned with height than strength when we talk about big, and Forms is 6'1" with long arms.
Right.
He is, like, a lot about his profile, the combine testing, the on-ball production, the height and length they like. He checks a lot of their boxes. I'd be surprised if he's not on their board. The question to me when he comes in, and this is my bigger hang-up with Emmanuel Forbes than his size. As much as I want them to get a bigger corner, like a big physical corner, Forbes is a ball hawk. He's not a lockdown guy.
Right.
And for people who don't know the difference, like, lockdown corner is Revis, Gilmore. They're guys that they don't put up a ton of numbers because the ball's never thrown near them. The guys just never open. A ball hawk corner is more Malcolm Butler, J.C. Jackson, Asante Samuel. The premier one right now in the NFL is Trayvon Diggs. Those guys are trying to bait the quarterbacks into making bad decisions, make the receiver look open, and then go get the football and create turnovers.
Right.
Those guys are much more high risk, high reward.
Mm-hmm.
Look at Trayvon Diggs, right? I think he's overrated because, he picks off 10 passes every year, but he allows 15 touchdowns. He shouldn't. He's going for the ball.
Yeah.
He has gotten better. I think J.C. Jackson's a great example of, he came in as a pure ball hawk. And as he kind of progressed, they helped him develop into more of a lockdown corner who could go get the football. If they draft Emmanuel Forbes, that's going to be the conversation for me. I don't think they draft him to play the way he played at Mississippi State. They draft him for his length and athleticism, and then they say, hey, we're going to try to get you to play more lockdown. And essentially, they're going to try to turn him into J.C. Jackson. If they, like, the comp's J.C. Jackson, that's who they're going to try to turn him into. So the fact they did it with Jackson is encouraging, and that's why, like, I'm not giving up on that idea, because I normally hate ball hockey corners. I want the lockdown every day of the week.
Yeah.
But if they can kind of get him on that J.C. Jackson track, he's going to be on their board, like high on their board.
It's interesting. Yeah, that's a great point that you make. A really great point. And it's interesting because the hardest thing is that, to me, you have a ball hawking corner on the other side and Jack Jones. So then it's like, now you got two ball hawking corners.
And then you've got a ball hawking safety in Kyle Duggar. And like, you're really aggressive now. Look, they led the league in defensive touchdowns last year for a reason, but there's a flip side of that. And we saw it at times last year. And for me, like you said, give me a safe guy on one side. I'm not saying everybody needs to be locked down. It's unrealistic. Give me a safe guy on one side. All ball hawks, it's going to be an adventure.
Right. Agreed. Team Crazy Matt does mention Matthew Bergeron at 46, with a bunch of people going there, or I guess mocking him there. That's an interesting one to me. I mean, I'm kind of like you, where I have those three that you have in that same bubble. I think Bergeron is close to those three guys, but I wouldn't put him in that tier with those three, with DeJuan Jones and Anton Harrison, and Jiminy Christmas. And who the hell is the kid
DeJuan
from
Jones, Anton Harrison, Darnell Wright.
Darnell Wright, thank you, from Tennessee. I'm like, what, blanking on his name. The people in the Skull Show chat are gonna be pissed at me for that one. But Bergeron's close to that level, in my opinion, but he's just not quite there for me. He's more of a third round pick to me, or late second round. Once those three guys are off the board. That's kind of how I feel about Bergeron. I'm not sure if you feel the same way, but that's how I feel about him.
You honestly might be higher on him than I am. I don't put him in that tier. I have him like, I'll take Freeland over him. I might even take Tyler Steen over him, because I think both Steen and Bergeron probably end up being right guards when it's all said and done. Steen's going to be a better guard. He's a more technically sound player. Like Bergeron, he has the arm length. He does hit that 30-inch mark. He's actually at 33 and a quarter, but he doesn't move well. He doesn't get out of his set well. His pass protection skills aren't there. At best, he's a pure right tackle.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I think he ends up making the move inside to guard at some point. So I've seen Bergeron at 46. With the other tackles that should be on the board, that pick worries me, because that, again, I think you're taking a guard there, and we're going to be sitting here next year saying, well, it's a good thing they took Bergeron at 46 because they let Michael Onwenu walk, and now they have a guy to plug in there.
Right. No, that's a good point too, I guess. But again, if you're drafting, if for the second year in a row you're drafting a guard in the first two rounds, that's not good. That's not what we want.
Right.
So, I think the double dip at tackle, like you mentioned, is a good idea. I think double dipping a corner or wide receiver, or even both, is a decent idea. You got a ton of picks.
I don't need to see them double dip a wide receiver. I'll be honest. I don't.
Yeah.
I don't even really need to see them take a receiver if it's not in the first round, because they have this collection of like number twos, and they've got great depth. I think Devontae Parker's a really good player. I love Kendrick Bourne. We'll see what Tyquan does, but man, you got to let him play to find out what you have in him. Yep. And then obviously they bring in Juju, right? What they don't need is another guy that's just going to mix into that rotation and not really play. You don't need a bench Kendrick Bourne again. Like, we don't need to see them do that again.
Right.
I don't need to see them bring in somebody who's going to muddle into that rotation. Top 50 pick needs to be on the field more often than not. First round pick needs to be like an 80% usage rate.
Right.
So if you're just going to draft a receiver who mixes into that rotation, what's the point? What exactly is the point? Because you're not improving. You're just giving that guy snaps that would have gone to Kendrick Bourne, who's probably better than the receiver you take at that spot. Yeah. Or, Devontae Parker, who's probably better than the receiver you take at that spot. Now, in the first round, JSN, Zay Flowers, those are the two guys I can really be talked into. After that, again, I think you're just putting somebody back in this carousel that it doesn't help. If you're at that point, go get an upside guy on day 3. Go get Bryce Ford Wheaton. Go get DeMario Douglas from Liberty. Go get Justin Shorter. Go get Michael Jefferson's been in this group. I saw actually this morning he got in a car accident today. I hope he's doing okay. But go get a guy. Go get a project guy like that on day 3 who you're not going to play anyway, because I don't need to see him draft a receiver who's not going to play, and I don't need to see him draft a receiver over a guy, or draft a receiver to play over a guy he shouldn't be playing over.
Right.
So receiver's a premier need for me, but it's not a real need, because they shouldn't just be replacing somebody in their rotation. It doesn't make them any better, which is also why I know we're moving on to the second round here, but I meant to bring this up. If they're going to take a receiver at 14, trade the 14th pick for Jerry Jeudy at that point.
Right.
Just do that, because especially like when it comes to Zay Flowers, who's the player we're all hoping Zay Flowers is in 3 years? It's Jerry Jeudy.
Yeah.
So you're essentially stepping in a time machine and speeding that up 3 years. You just get the guy. And by the way, he's already proven he can do it. And if you're going to tell me, well, you want the youth, well, Jerry Judy's only like 16 months older than Zay Flowers.
Right.
And if you tell me it's because you want the contract, guess what? You got the 4th year of the rookie deal. You got the 5th year option. Jerry Jeudy doesn't really become expensive until 2025. Who knows what this thing's going to look like by then?
Correct. Yeah, no,
I would go trade for Jerry Jeudy, because he's a clear number 1 in this offense.
I agree 100%. And I think taking a guy later is a good idea. he get the Foxborough flu and he sits out for the
Right.
year, and and he's kind of a practice squad guy or an IR guy, fine, and he's able to step in next year when Parker and Bourne might both be gone, right?
Right.
Fine. But you're right. Like, there's no point in taking a guy at 46 or, at 76 or whatever the case may be. It's like that guy's not going to play right away. To your point about Darnell Washington, I know we're circling back to tight ends, but I think it'd be dumb to take it. And you said it too. Like, he's the guy. Don't take anyone other than him, because you have Gesicki and Hunter Henry. They're both receiving tight ends, receiving only tight ends. Sure. You want to line them up in line? Sure. Do you want to make them block someone? Okay, they can try. They're not good at it, but they'll do it. But like, you're going to draft another one of those guys? Now you got 3 of them. Like, that's foolish to me. Like, drafting Darnell Washington makes sense because he gives you like another offensive lineman on the field. Those other guys, they don't make sense to draft high because they're just are they going to be better than Mike Gesicki or Hunter Henry right now? And if they're not going to be, that guy's never going to play. It doesn't make any sense.
Right. You just hit the nail on the head. It's like I just talked about at receiver. Don't draft somebody that high who's not going to play again. If that's the guy you want, and I get it, you want to make sure you have a receiving tight end in the pipeline signed beyond this year. Gesicki and Henry are both pending free agents. Again, Zach Kuntz at 107 from Old Dominion, right. Combine freak. It's that easy. But yeah, in the top 100, like Dalton Kincaid visited today, right? And everybody got hot and bothered about Dalton Kincaid. Long-term, is Dalton Kincaid going to be a better player than Hunter Henry and Mike Gesicki? Maybe, but not as a rookie. So again, they need to win this year. Those top 3 picks need to be guys who make impact. I feel like upgrade and addition kind of get used as synonyms at times. They're not. Is Dalton Kincaid an upgrade? Maybe. He's not an addition. He's not. Right? Darnell Washington is an addition. You don't have that element. Frankly, nobody has that element. I think Darnell Washington's a unicorn. You only get a couple of these guys in every draft. I think, I look at Darnell Washington and DeJuan Jones as the 2 guys, and I guess Zach Kuntz later on. Those are the unicorns. So often we get enamored with these prospects, and the reality is, it's not to take anything away from any individual. They're all incredibly talented, but some people got really hot and bothered over the tackles last year. You can draft that guy this year. Maybe you needed him more last year, but like, you're not missing out.
Right.
There's very few guys. It was Jordan Davis last year. If you wanted Jordan Davis, you didn't draft him last year. You're not getting a similar player.
Right.
If you want Darnell Washington, you got to take him this year because you're not getting 6'7",
like 280 or something stupid.
270, 4'6", 440 with a 408 shuttle. That guy is not going to be on the board next year.
Right.
Dalton Kincaid, Michael Mayer, those guys are going to be on the board next year. I'll tell you that right now. Like, they're good. So is Brock Bowers. So is normally I have names off the top of my head. I don't right now, but there's other good tight ends coming next year.
Yeah.
Darnell Washington is the guy. He gives you something that you don't have. He's a unicorn. He's going to play. He's going to play next to those 2 guys. He's not redundant. If they don't take Darnell Washington in the second round, I'm good on tight end until we get out of the top 100, frankly.
Yeah. What's interesting is that you talk about a trade back. Maybe they trade back and draft Darnell Washington in the first round. Like, who knows? And I think I would be okay with that. Like, as long as you're taking him in the mid to late 20s, I got no problem with that. At 14, that's insane. But like mid to late 20s, I'm okay. You've picked up an extra day 2 pick, maybe even more than one, depending on how far down you've gone. And, you're saying, just kind of like you said earlier, you're taking a corner and, a tackle or a wide receiver on day 2, as opposed to taking them on day 1. Right. And so I'm okay with that, but I agree with that. And that's kind of how I feel about the draft sometimes, is like, it's not that hard. Like, just take those guys that are freaks. Like, if you like them, now maybe you don't like them. Maybe you look at that guy and say, maybe you look at Darnell Washington and say, okay, great. He's big and he's fast. That's awesome. But he's dumb as a stump and he's never going to do what we ask him to do. And it's never going to work. Okay. If that's the way you feel, that's fine. That's the way you feel. I think you're probably wrong about that, but they know a hell of a lot more than I do, So it's one of those things, but don't sit there and say, we get him next year. No, you can't. No, he can't. You can't. Right. You can't find a guy like that. So
if you're that worried about missing on Dalton Kincaid, look up a guy named Cade Stover from Ohio State. He'll be there on the board next year in a second round. It's fine.
Say, there you go. See, look at that. So Alex coming in with the college football player for the people out there. Everyone knows who Brock Bauer is, but not everyone knows who Cade Stover is. So so we appreciate that. All right, third round. We'll just do really quick third round. Who's the guy on the board at 76 for you? It's a little bit further down the draft board, of course, but maybe it's a guy that they'll do something similar to the second round. Maybe they trade up in the third round. Maybe they, or maybe they reach for a guy that might be in someone's top 100, but closer to 100 than 76. That you think, might be the guy there.
So this is where I think maybe they get a little looser positionally. And look, I've already mentioned some guys, tackle Blake Freeland. We talked about him, Wanya Morris, Tyler Steen. I'm good at, like I said, I'm good at wide receiver at this point. Maybe if Marvin Mims falls, he's a guy you look at there. At the cornerback position, I look at a guy like Tyreek Stevenson from Miami. Does he fall to this range? Some people think he might. I look at, and we've gotten to the time of year where there's a million names in my head now, Pat.
Right.
And,
I know.
I struggle with it. I look at a guy like Kai Blue Kelly from Stanford. Is he a guy you maybe look at? But, edge guys, this is where edge guys really start to come into play for me. And honestly, front seven guys, defensive tackles, linebackers. Byron Young from Tennessee. So there's two Byron Youngs, both from the SEC, both play in the front seven, both expected to go in the same range of the draft. Byron Young from Alabama is a defensive tackle. Byron Young from Tennessee's defensive end, outside linebacker, kind of hybrid guy. If he passes the interviews, checks a lot of boxes for the Patriots. He's older. He's 25, but they like older prospects. They've had the oldest average draft age in the league since 2017. So they're going to look at these older guys that are a little more developed. Played 2 years at JUCO ball, transferred to Tennessee, was a 2-year starter, was very productive. Looks like a 3-down player, a guy who can set the edge against the run, but also is good at collapsing the pocket and passing game. The reason he's going later, frankly, is because he's kind of older, and he only has, 2 years of FBS experience. He was at the JUCO for 2 years.
Right.
Wasn't like a highly ranked high school recruit. So Byron Young from Tennessee is a guy I liked, and I'm going to butcher his name, Adebawore, the guy from Northwestern in this range. I think after the combine, he's going to go higher. He might be a guy at 46. And another guy I really think they'll like. And Pat, how many years have we done this? They need the athletic, 3-down, modern, off-ball coverage linebacker. And 2 years ago, it was a great class. Oh, they're definitely going to get one of those guys. They didn't. Last year was a great class. Well, now they're definitely going to get the guy, and they didn't. So I don't know if we're setting ourselves up for disappointment again. This class kind of sucks at linebacker, so maybe they take 2. But Henry To'o from Alabama, I wanted him last year. He would have been a first-round pick if he came out last year. He didn't. Played hurt this year. That kind of hurt his stock and didn't test well at the combine, but played a couple years at Tennessee, transferred to Alabama. His first year at Alabama, he learned the defense so well that Nick Saban gave him the college equivalent of the green dot. Like, he was calling the defense. Incredibly smart, instinctive football player, can handle things sideline to sideline. A little bit on the smaller end. He's not going to be the best asset against the run, but you have Juwan Bentley playing next to him, so that's fine. He can cover. He can rush the passer. I would be very surprised if Henry To'o is not on their board. 76 is maybe a little early. This is more like if they trade back in the third round. Yeah. But they might also like him enough that they say, you know what? We're taking him at 76. We believe in him. We don't want to lose him. He's our guy.
Right. Or, they could do something. They got 3 fourth-round picks, right? They could package 2 of those and move up, into the late third round, take someone at 76 and get, Toa at the end of the third round too. So that's also a possibility. I think you kind of hit the nail on the head with the edge class. I just think this is kind of that spot, whether it's Isaiah McGuire, whether it's Carl Brooks, whether it's, there's a bunch of guys kind of in this range that I feel like the Patriots, this is kind of that sweet spot for them where they can look at it and say, yep, we can draft a guy here. We can go after this type of player. And I think it's interesting. One of the guys that really fascinates me is Gervin Dexter. It's funny because sometimes you watch it and someone pointed, and I don't know who said it, and maybe it was in a chat I was in, maybe it was online, I don't remember, but someone saying sometimes you watch him and you literally don't know if he knows how to play football. The ball gets snapped and he just stands there and you're like, where are you going? What are you doing? And then other times he smokes his guy with a sweet rip move, or like bull rushes his guy into the backfield and makes a play 2 yards in the backfield. And you're like, this guy, I have no idea what you're getting from this guy. But again, I talked about it earlier. If you can get that guy in the middle of the defense that can get after the quarterback and create pressure up the middle, that is an incredibly valuable position. And Dexter has the ability to do that. Now, whether he's going to be able to do it consistently, I have no idea, right? But what scares me more than anything is that the fact that he's from Florida, and we drafted another guy from Florida who played in the middle, who was kind of, and didn't have such terrible tape that Dexter has at times. But, Dominique Easley was a guy who looked incredibly explosive from the inside, and he just didn't have any knees left when they drafted him. But that comp, I think, scares a lot of people, but he's just such a strange player that the highs of him are really good, and the lows are like, this guy shouldn't even be on an NFL roster. Never mind get drafted. It's crazy.
So defensive tackle, those one position. Look, defensive tackle might have been all around the best position at the Shrine Bowl. They got to look at some guys that are really talented. I like Moro Ojimo from Texas. There's another guy from Texas, Keandre Coburn, and then Deontay Stills from West Virginia. I said before, I was waiting for Henry Toe to come out last year. Every year I keep a running list. As I'm watching college football, see a guy do something. I put him in my phone. I'm like, remember him during draft season. I've had Dante Stills on my list for 3 years, and he finally is coming out. And I got to talk to him about it at Shrine Bowl. He actually gave me a really interesting answer. He felt like the NFL, he wants to be a leader. He wants to be a vocal leader. He wants all that. He wanted to learn more how to be a teammate and a leader. And that's why he kept going back to school, which if he said that to the Patriots in an interview, I think they would love.
That sounds like a Patriots answer.
I look at guys like that a little higher up the board. You got Zach Pickens from South Carolina. I think they're going to wait until day 3 to go with a defensive tackle. I think they're going to take a defensive tackle, at least one, if not more than one. But there's so much talent late in this draft at defensive tackle. I don't think they're going to maybe jump at one.
Okay. I like it. Yeah. So, all right. Anyone else you want to, before we get out of here, anyone else you want to name? Anyone that you're super high on? Maybe they won't go in the first 2 days, but you're like, this guy needs to be on the Patriots.
Oh, how much time you got, right? I mean, look, I already said Zach Kuntz a couple times. Everybody knows I'm a big fan of his. I like them taking another pass catching running back in this draft, but that's Eric Gray from Oklahoma, Travis Dye from USC. I've said that they'll do the exact opposite. They'll take Chris Rodriguez from Kentucky, who's a bowling ball, would be a Damian Harris replacement.
Right.
Interior offensive line, like Anthony Bradford from LSU later on. I'll give you a really interesting one on the edge. Kind of talked about defensive lineman Jose Ramirez from Eastern Michigan.
I like him.
A guy that kind of snuck onto my radar there. You watch him at the combine. This is such a stupid thing, but this is what the draft process is. The way he came on my radar, first of all, the group he's with at the combine, he breaks down the huddle before all the drills. And he was cheering everybody on. He's right there up front. I'm like, this guy, he's definitely doing this to get noticed. So let me watch him. 20 tackles for a loss last year at Eastern Michigan. Guy plays shot out of a cannon, high motor, doesn't quit on anything. I think he's got a lot of room to grow his game. He's very raw right now, but I love his upside. And you look at, guys the Patriots have drafted at that position they've been patient with. Josh Uche, Anthony Jennings. We're going to talk about a year 3 jump this year coming up for Ronnie Perkins. They're not going to take him. Right. They're not going to take him in the top 100 like they took those guys. He's probably a little later on. But boy, I could see that. At corner, some of the later corners I like. Keitrell Clark from Louisville. Max Melton from Rutgers. He will be a Patriot. He'll be a UDFA, but he will be a Patriot. He blocked 3 punts on his own last year. Depth safeties, I like Ronnie Hickman from Ohio State. Trevarius Owens from Houston. Favorite kicker in this draft is probably Jake Moody from Michigan, but don't sleep on Harrison Mevis. Beast from Missouri. He doesn't warm up. He's 260 pounds. He doesn't warm up. How when kickers go out there, they don't, they take a couple. He just goes out there and kicks, and he's great. And I don't think Patriots will take him, but look him up. He's ridiculous. And then Michael Turk is my punter in this draft. So
there you go.
You can't ask me one day 3 player, Pat.
I know. Hey, listen, this is true, Alex. But that's all right. I asked the question. I let you go. That's all. That's it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So Z-Tac says insert special teamer here. I agree. I agree,
Melton.
Turk.
Look him up.
I agree. Turk, Moody, even Noah Ruggles, I think is interesting. Noah Ruggles,
like
of
Noah
course,
Ruggles.
missed that kick horrendously, but like he did win the Peach Bowl last year with a last second kick. So, you can kind of you take to go with the bad, I guess, right? So, but oh my God, you're right. There's so many of you mentioned running backs. Evan Hull is a guy that I'm high
Love
on.
Evan Hull. Love
He,
Evan Hull.
I mean, he's got what 80 something catches over the last 2 years. Like, you talk about a pass catching back, right?
Yeah.
So, and there's so many guys, and I've done so many mock drafts at this point that, it's like I've published 5 of them, which is insane, but I'm keep going. I'm keep coming out with one every Monday, because why the hell not? People like them. So I keep doing it. But then I'm like, searching for guys, and I'm like, oh, this guy's way down the list, so.
So you want one more name way off the board?
Yes, I do.
This is when people say, all right, give me one. Give me a deep one.
Yeah.
It's a quarterback.
Okay.
Holton Ahlers from East Carolina.
Do you say
lefty?
Did you say Dalton Antlers?
Holton. I don't know if it's Ahlers or Allers.
Okay.
Kid's a tank. 6'3", 245. He's a decent passer. He's not great, but I go back to when the Patriots played the Falcons 2 years ago. Bill Belichick went on this whole diatribe about Felipe Franks and the value you get in a player like that who can play quarterback and tight end and cover kicks. And he talked about, he brought up Taysom Hill. He's done this a couple times. If there's a Taysom Hill in this draft, it is Holton Ahlers. So, look, they brought in to Eric King last year as UDFA, was a hybrid quarterback receiver, kick returner, right? Special teams guy. Yep. Ultimately didn't end up making it to the spring, but he was there. I think there were some injury issues. Holton Ahlers also, he was the MVP. So everybody knows the Senior Bowl, the Shrine Bowl. There's also the Hula Bowl.
Yep.
There's the NFLPA Bowl. Like, there's other bowls. Holton Ahlers was the MVP of both the Hula Bowl and the NFLPA Bowl.
That's pretty impressive right there.
UDFA, pencil it in. Him and Max Melton.
I love it. I love it, dude. This is why we have you on, Barth, because you have all these ridiculous names that no one else has ever heard of, and it's fantastic. And that's what we want. You want the most
ridiculous name in the draft?
Let's go.
Shockey Jacques Louis is a wide receiver from Akron, Pitt transfer. Really good route runner. Like, I don't know that he has NFL burst or agility, but he's a great route runner, and he's covered a ton of kicks in his career from Pitt to Akron. Another guy projected UDFA, but there's another one for you. Shockey Jacques Louis. That's a good one. I was going to say Jadakiss Bonds, because anyone that's a fan of 90s rap, knows Jadakiss. Yep. So, it is. Bumper Pool.
Yep. Right. Another one. And that's, I just think the Patriots are such wild cards, especially in the draft. You just don't know what they're going to do, right? You don't know who they're going to take. You have no idea what they're looking at, right? Do they take Mo Diabate in the 4th round because he's basically Devin Lloyd, but a year out, but not as good as Devin Lloyd, right? And so, it's one of those, like, what types of players are they going to go after? Who do they want, right? And so, just keeps everyone guessing, They're going to like Diabate too. I got to talk to him at the Shrine Bowl, and I kind of asked, when I was talking to players who were playing with the Patriots, I asked them all, like, did you watch, offense or defense, depending on which side they were on? Did you watch the Patriots system at all to see how you'd fit into it? He's like, yeah, I watched a bunch. We're like, well, who do you like? What role do you see yourself in? And most guys, I asked all the linebackers, they're saying, I think I'm Josh Uche. I think I'm Juwan Bentley. Couple guys said Dante Hightower. He goes, well, I look at the way Mike Vrabel played. You're like 24. And then he brought up Willie McGinnis, like so good.
Mike Vrabel and Willie McGinnis. And then he starts talking to me about Jack Lambert. And I'm like, I was like, all right, like, before we get to the rest of this interview, you're going to talk to Bill at some point. You need to talk to him about this stuff.
Right.
Because he will love it that this 24-year-old kid wants to talk about the steel curtain. So I don't know if you took my advice, Diabate. I don't know if he brought that up to Bill, but if he did, like you talk about, a lot of people saying 6th, 7th round. Well, he's Devin Lloyd a year removed, and he's a football history nut.
Yep.
Maybe there's something there.
It's true. It's true. And you know what? Those interviews sometimes are so fascinating, because I remember hearing a story about Brandon Spikes at the Combine. I think it was at the Combine. And, he sits down with the team, and they're interviewing him, and they're asking him, and they're saying, well, you had to sacrifice some things, for individual accolades, and maybe your tackles weren't as high, and he just like looks at them across the table, puts his hands on the table, and he's like, nobody gives a crap about your freaking tackles. The only thing that matters is this right here. And it was just like, and I was like, well, that's why he was a Patriot, like,
Right.
so it's just like those types of things make a lasting impact. And so if you have guys that are doing their homework and saying things like that, it's like if Mo Diabate gets drafted in the 4th round by the Patriots, we sit there and say, well, maybe that's why, and so
Right.
it's just, that's the type of stuff that, again, we don't see that. It's not on tape. It's not on film. It's not, no one's writing that up in the scouting report, but that makes an impact. And that real life stuff is why guys get drafted sometimes.
Right.
So it's interesting. Well, anyways, this has been so much fun, Barth. Thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it. Before we let you go, you have to plug yourself. Let us know where everyone can read you and see you and hear you and watch you as well.
Yeah, so all my written stuff, all my draft stuff's at 985thesportshub.com. We're making our way through the I do every year big piece on each position in the draft. Be dropping the cornerback edition tomorrow, so we're almost there. I got mock drafts and everything up there as well, 985thesportshub.com. You can hear me on the Catch 22 podcast with Evan Lazar on Patriots.com. We'll have a new episode tomorrow. And on the Patriots Beat podcast on CLNS Media with Mike Cadlick, we will have a new live mock draft tomorrow on that program. So
nice. Love
busy
it.
time of year.
Sure is. It's so much fun, though. It's so much fun.
Oh, yeah.
I love it. So, well, thank you, Sarah. Really appreciate it. And have
Anytime.
a great night. And thank you, everyone, for listening. And we'll talk to you. I won't be here next week, but Matt will be here next week with a special guest that he's awfully excited about. So you'll have to wait and see who that is.